Hi, this is Graphically Alex, coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today we're going to go ahead and continue with Compulsive Ramblers coverage of NEDA. I was horrified last week when I saw that they were basically stating that they were going to help people downsize just to get people in the door. So basically committing fraud in order to trick people into going into the program to then be convinced to not, which is insane. So that was the last thing that we covered. I'm going to go ahead and continue now.
Just bear that in mind when you think about Craig Johnson then. So he joined this place in 2010, all the way through to 2016, they were saying.
So Craig Johnson is one of the board members, I believe, of NEDA.
That they treated obesity, and then a few years later, right, remember 2016 they were still saying that, this conference happens in which all those clinics get called out in a big public way at a NEDA and BEDA conference, which would have had a lot of influential people going to it and then coming back and reporting to their own respective clinics and charities and things. And soon after that, I noticed, 2017, 2018, 2019, all these clinic websites, not just Eating Recovery Centre, but a lot of them, that's when they really dropped the obesity word hard. They stopped talking about that, and they seemed to publicly go way more haze. So that could be what happened here.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah, so I've talked about this a little bit, where I call them bloater conferences. So you guys know that those of you who have been on my channel for a while, I use The Last of Us Zombies as a metaphor for how the toxic ritualistic, which is what I call it on the channel, aka E followed by the letter D, we have to talk codedly because of NEDA, because NEDA censors us, so we can't talk about anything. So I have to use coded language for the sake of YouTube. But basically, I call them bloater conferences. It's basically when a lot of people that are very, very deep in the TR, they all gather and then they spread the unified message. They spread the message that they want every clinic to have, all of society to have, all this type of stuff. So they will go and further infect each other at these conferences. And there's a lot of level 1 zombies there. So I call them runners, That's people who don't really have the issue, but they are vulnerable to the rhetoric or vulnerable to ED logic for some reason. So they fall for it. And a lot of them then spread the message to people who are attempting to get help and that kind of thing. Or to YouTube, tells YouTube how to censor, etc. So it continues to fuel the logic. That's the biggest issue with this.
Could be that Craig Johnson joined a place that was already secretly pro-obesity. The only other relevant things I can find of him talking about obesity in any way are this now deleted video in which he supposedly is quoted as saying that the war on obesity can create gateways to EDs.
Yeah, it's totally gaslighting. So it's this idea that if we try to deal with the issue, then we're causing the issue. That's completely wrong. It doesn't make any sense. In what other circumstance would attempting to deal with a problem create the same problem? It just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. It's superstition. So if we talk about obesity or if we try to fix it, then we're causing it. I think that if we don't allow people to fix it or we tell them they shouldn't, that would make it worse. Don't you think? It doesn't take rocket science to see that. And we've seen the result of this approach. It doesn't work. It's gaslighting.
Of his original quote though, it's just the title of the video. For some years, NEDA published and sold on their website this book for children in schools. It was meant to be part of a school curriculum called Healthy Body Image, Teaching Kids to Eat and Love Their Bodies Too, by Kathy Cater, that same author who wrote that screed, a call to action, literally is what it was, what said at the top of the article, edited by two members of NEDA, Margot Main and Doug Bonnell. And so they also pushed her book, and this one, Real Kids Come in All Sizes, They purchased it. You could purchase it through the NEDA store back in 2007 and some years. And at this point, it's a second edition. Look at the wording here. Those who have enjoyed teaching, yes, this was taught in schools, the original healthy body image lessons will find the newly revised lessons in the second edition to be familiar, but improved by recommendations from educators and updated empirical data. I suspect it was the recommendations. I think they were hearing like, we're not keen on some of this. Maybe, speculation. In addition to previous concerns covered, including the drive to be thin, diet mentality, and poor fitness habits, excessive low nutrient / high calorie eating and unhealthy weight gain are specifically addressed. So after some pressure, because this wasn't in the original book, eating too much and unhealthy weight gain, they included those things. But we saw that article, and I've read other material by Kathy Cater. I have a strong feeling if I were to buy this book, which I won't, it will say something like, if you have healthy blood markers, if your triglycerides and cholesterol are normal.
It would be soft taste. That's what it would be, I'm sure.
It's not unhealthy weight gain, which doesn't apply to anyone, but certainly not children. Obviously, their cholesterol is unlikely to be high. In 2010, they...
Yeah, it's kind of like, again, I don't know if gaslighting's the right word, but deceptive. You're not going to have diabetes when you're a child. Typically, unless if you have like type 1. Typically, you're not going to have high blood pressure when you're 8 years old, even if you're obese. Those things come a bit later. So it's like, is it a problem or not? It's a problem when we develop the high blood pressure at some point, then it's a problem. But until then it's not a problem, because then you're meant to be overweight, but then you're not meant to be overweight because then you get the problem later. It's stupid. It's like playing a game of chicken with your body. Like, it's weird. Obviously, being obese is a problem. It's a preventable problem. It's a fixable problem. It will also prevent things like type 2 diabetes, or at least prolong the time before you would get it. It puts you in a better position. It's less risky. And to especially have children, normalizing obesity to children is so particularly dark. I don't even really know what to say. For what? Because you have a problem? Because you have an issue. You want to normalize obesity for children. Children are at the mercy of adults. Who's taking care of them, the society they grow up in, all that stuff. Children don't have agency in the way that adults do. So to be pushing this onto kids, it's particularly immoral. Kids don't have the ability to see long-term consequences of being obese. Kids don't necessarily I don't even think kids have the ability to do that long-term plan, or to even see that there's a connection between what I'm eating today and getting bigger later. If they could see that, it would be like not a super realistic version, you know? As far as I know, like, I mean, I'm not like super expert here, but you don't really have an adult-like brain at all until at least the age of 11. And, you know, when we think about like frontal lobe and all that, that takes forever to develop completely. So it's like, I've always said, I think when it comes to kids, the conversation should be around keeping it calm. So it should always be like calming. Somebody said I was fat at school. Okay, teach it like they said something about anything else. Did they say it about their big nose? Did they say it about their ears being like, you know, like this? Did they say it about that? Treat it like you would treat that. Treat it like anything else. And then you just feed your kid actual food. Like, I know that that's a really radical concept today in the United States, but you might have to cook. You might need to actually, or you're going to have to pay more for healthier food that's already pre-made. I mean, kids are an investment. I don't know what to tell you. And I do think that it does reflect on parenting. if a child's obese. But oftentimes the issue is that the parent is toxically ritualistic as well. Or I don't know about as well. Not every kid is. Kids only develop it if there's something that happens, typically. There's usually a trauma involved if you develop this as a child. But if you're talking about, like, you can still have the behavior modeled, so the parent can have it. And the parent can raise the child in the toxic ritualistic spores, essentially. So they're raised that way. It makes them very vulnerable to being a runner level zombie, a level 1. They're going to be empathetic, overly empathetic towards the fat struggle, or towards the fat struggle, I have to call it that, towards the dieting and the cycling and the shitty food and the weird logic and the calories don't matter, and just all of that. And once you get this big, then you can never go back, and that kind of toxic ritualistic logic. If that's in the parent, it's not that the parent is intentionally doing that to their kid. It's just that it is cyclical, or it is passed down between generations, which people don't like to talk about that either. But like I said, this is not just an internal issue. This doesn't just affect you. If you have this problem, you affect other people. You affect your children if you have this problem. If you have the TR, you affect your kids, you affect society. It's not harmless. It isn't just harming one person. It's not, well, I'm just doing what I'm doing. No, you're not. Because 9 times out of 10, you're passing it down to your kid, even if it's just mildly so or subclinical. If they believe enough of your bullshit, they're at a subclinical level. And it makes them very vulnerable to these messages from other zombies that are all too eager to have more people have the issue. So you have to get out of it yourself as a parent. I will always say that. You must get out. You cannot fake recovery. You have to get recovered. Period. You need to be logical about this. It's not acceptable. This is not acceptable on any level. It is not acceptable to be in the TR. It's absolutely not. So you have to get out. Period. I don't care what side of it you're on. I don't care if you're reductive, if you're doing too much. I don't care if you're talking to Mia. I don't give a fuck. If you have kids, they are watching what you're doing. You are not hiding it. I don't give a fuck if you think you're hiding it. You're not. They see everything. Every single thing. They can see it. And they will copy you. So you're not just taking yourself down. You are taking down your kid too. You need to get out of it.
And with Stop Obesity Alliance on a campaign which was talking about how we can help reverse obesity, emphasise that it's about health and not appearance. 2011, they were bullied into leaving by Reagan Chastain, a fat activist who made a petition, and they caved in within a few days.
Oftentimes with kids too, people will start to project their issues onto their kids. That's a horrible thing to do. It's truly horrible. So you've got to get rid of it.
They were no longer working with Stop Obesity Alliance. Reagan Chastain, that same lady who was a blogosphere fat activist and a ambassador to NEDA, which tells you something about NEDA in itself, I think, that they would have her as an ambassador since 2019. Well, in 2020, she resigned over the firing of Shavise Turner. For a year or two, the chief strategy officer. She had founded BEDA, the Bed Association, which is a charity that NEDA merged with in 2018, which I will talk about in the next video. It's a really fascinating story. And she was...
I might need to read this for my members. I think I might need to read this one. I'm going to look at that again. I'm going to have to read this for my members, I think.
Officer for NEDA after the merger, as is the custom whenever NEDA gobbles up another charity, which it does regularly, to become as big and powerful, full of resources, full of staff. and well known as it is, it's because it gobbles up these other charities, and that might have been its downfall. Maybe that's when things really went off the rails. But yeah, this is a story they had on her before the breakup. They haven't taken it down, evidently, even though they seemingly did not part on good terms. No one ever made an official statement, and because of that, yes, all these fat activists took it as evidence of fat phobia. For the time being, the only reason I want to point out the controversy in 2020 of them firing Charisse Turner for reasons we don't know is that this lady Reagan Chastain mentioned in her blog post about it that at the time of the partnership that they formed with the Stop Obesity Alliance, she had been told by them that they did it as a compromise. That would make it sound like they were only pretending to be against obesity, or they were trying to sneak their way in and put their fat acceptance ideas in, which is a thing that we have seen fat activists do. Find food freedom, okay? For example, she's a dietitian who has given advice to other dietitians on if you can't find a health at every size position, you can always get a regular position and put your little ideas into it and try and put the seeds in people's minds in a way. I'm paraphrasing her. Look into it yourself graphically. Alex did a really good video on her. I've looked back at the Stop Obesity Alliance thing, and I did find something interesting. The 2011 document with the list of recommendations to public health authorities that they made with the Stop Obesity Alliance.
Which again, find food freedom, she was only ever subclinical, so she doesn't even have the problem. And she's promoting it. She believes it. I know she believes in it. You can tell. But it's because she had a minor struggle with her weight, and she likely more so had an alcohol issue. But again, people that get into that runner stage of like, I'm going to run cover for you, or I'm going to give you excuses, or I'm going to push the logic to other people because I'm such a do-gooder, right? That kind of person. They usually have mental health issues that aren't the TR, or that are kind of adjacent, or, you know, they have other problems, or like I said, they struggled with their weight one time or something. And so then they project the way that they think about it onto somebody who's deep within an issue. And well, if I did it, or like if I could have done this and, you know, I got it together, then they could too, using the same framework. I'll listen to them. They know more about it than I do. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. But that's how they take it. And then a lot of runners, they're convinced by, well, if you say something against it, it's just so mean. It's just so mean. It's such a mean thing to say, don't you think? So they fall for that. And it's like, you're a professional. You should be worried about what's true. You should be worried about the facts. You shouldn't be worried about being mean. I don't think you have to be like necessarily harsh or shaming, but you need to not be so concerned with not shaming somebody that you literally are lying to them and enabling bad behaviors, especially as a professional. It's like, come on now. Should you be in that position if you can't handle any pushback? I don't know. But again, it is kind of a system because they have all these higher ups. They go to these conferences. That's where Find Food Freedom. She went to a bloater conference. That's where she became a zombie. And so every time they do that, people are convinced, and then they push and they tell everybody, and it just keeps going. And even people that have never had the issue are now encouraging people that are in it, which is horrifying. It's very dark because you have to understand, you are encouraging, at best, you're encouraging a severely limited quality of life that's so unnecessary. At worst, you're encouraging death.
Excess weight may be in good health.
By the way, sorry if you can hear the lawn work. I'm at that point in Alabama where, like, we're at that point of the year where everybody's doing yard work all the time. Like, I think once it gets hot, it just never stops. So it's the same thing with the air conditioning. It's just always going to be on. We're there.
People carrying excess weight may practice healthy habits, while others may be able to maintain their weight despite poor eating and physical habits, or by engaging in weight unhealthy weight control behaviors. If it's excess weight, I don't think it's healthy. And the idea that people can carry excess weight despite doing these things right, I mean, some healthy habits, but you are definitely consuming more calories than you need if you have excess weight and it's not fluid retention. And then what's this idea that people can maintain their healthy weight despite eating poorly? Well, I mean, yes, in terms of nutrition, but it is still that they're eating the right number of calories. If they're maintaining their healthy weight, at least they're doing the calorie part right. I think that needs to be pointed out. The fact that they don't explain that,
Yeah, this is stupid logic right here. Weight status does not necessarily reflect weight status does not necessarily reflect health status. That is not true. Like, at all. I think you could say that within a narrow range, but even then, even if you're just class 1 obese or you're just a bit under, it's still a problem. It's just not as bad of a problem. I don't understand what is up with the zombie brain where it's like it has to be completely healthy or completely unhealthy for us to say anything. There's no gradient. It's like, what the hell? And why is there nobody in the room saying, well, couldn't it just be less healthy? Does it have to be like you're on death's door tomorrow if you're class 1 obese? Or can it just be you're less healthy than if you weren't obese? Because that's how I see it. That seems like a logical statement. I don't know why that's so hard for them.
It really makes it sound like they're saying that some people are just going to be fat no matter what, and some people are going to be healthy weight no matter what. Weight is greatly affected by environmental, social, and genetic factors that govern body type, ability /
So that's important too. So it takes more than just willpower to maintain a healthy weight. A strong support system is necessary. So they're kind of shifting this here. So it's confusing. Are you encouraging willpower or not? So they're waffling with that. Because if it's not possible or whatever, then you shouldn't try at all. That's where the logic goes, which I don't know if they project onto a non-zombified person that they would hear, well, I should just try the best I can. That's not what they hear. They hear I shouldn't try at all. Which again, you would know if you were educated about the problem. They're going to take it to like the weirdest level. Whenever I talk about stuff on my channel, I have to be so specific all the time. You have to be extremely specific, and you have to literally, like when I talk about certain things, I have to break down so much nuance and explain things so in depth because I'm not going to reinforce this issue. So I say all the da-da-da-da, and then you shouldn't be under, and then this, and then that, but you should do it healthfully, and blah, 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 and this and that, and da-da-da-da-da, because I know what people hear. If you tell somebody in bingo sugar is bad for them, then they're just going to eat a bunch of fat. They're going to bingo on bacon. If you tell them that fat is bad for them, then they're going to bingo on sugar. Whenever you talk about things that way, you're projecting sanity onto the person. And I understand that. And that doesn't mean that everybody in the whole world has to do that. But it has to understand that. People can speak about things like a normal human. Not everybody is a zombie. But when you are NEDA, when you are supposed to be educated on this issue, you should do better than the average person, not worse. They do worse than the average person. This is even worse than somebody who's pushing keto or somebody who's pushing veganism or something like that from a non-toxically ritualistic perspective. This is worse than that. It's just truly wild. It really is, because that's why zombies always say, like, whenever you talk about healthy eating tips, that's how it started. No, it's because you heard something somewhat sensible or practical and you took it to the weirdest level because you chose to do that. That is your fault. That is you. You knew it was wrong. I've been in this issue. I knew it was wrong. You all know it's wrong. You do. That's why you don't tell people. Because you know it's wrong. And I'm not falling for it. I don't put up with that. I'm telling you, I would be one hell of a toxic ritualistic counselor, because I would not listen and they'd just be pissed and it would just be one big shouting match every day. That's also why they don't want to do it. They don't want to get in a shouting match. You have to shout somebody down sometimes. They don't want to do that. Why? Because it would actually be work. They'd have to actually have a job. They'd have to actually produce a result. They'd have to actually help somebody for the money that they're making. They don't want to do that. They just want to talk about feelings and then blame society because they don't have to do any work as a therapist. They are lazy. They are lazy. Let's call it out. You're lazy. You don't want to work with somebody. You don't want to help them. It's easier for you to blame society as a therapist. And of course, it's super reinforcing to the person, so they're not going to yell at you. They'll keep coming back. They'll think you're a nice person. Nobody wants to hear that it's their fault. If you hear advice and you take it to an insane level, that is your fault. It is. Now, on this channel, I'm aware, so I will 50 bajillion disclaimer to it's ridiculous sometimes how many disclaimers I have to make, because I know that if you say anything, they will look for the way around it. Well, if you say that, then I'll just do this. Well, if you say this, then I'll just do that. I'll just go here then. I'll just that. You have to say no. No, that's not what I'm saying. No, da 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 da. And then if they ask you, just tell them yes again. They'll often listen. They don't want to be in the problem, especially if they're coming to you. It's just like, my God, you guys, is it really that fucking hard to help somebody? If they ask you a question, tell them the answer. If they ask you that question 20 times, tell them the answer 20 times. This is their job. This is your job. Are you sure? Are you sure I can downsize? Like, is it possible? Yes, it's possible for you. Are you sure I can? Yes. Your body's not going to defy physics. You can. But it's not happening right now. You're just bloated. It will pass. Just calm down. Are you sure? Yes. Just keep going. You will. You'll see. Is that hard? For them, yes, it's too much. For those therapists, it's too much. You're supposed to support somebody. That's support. It's work. Yeah, supporting somebody is work. But don't act like you care about people in this problem when you don't, because you can't even do that. And you're not a nurturing person if you can't do that. If you can't give somebody confidence when they're coming to you for help with an issue, and then you're lying to them and you're telling them, oh yeah, we're going to help you downsize, but no, actually we're going to discourage you from it. Sick.
Ease of achieving weight loss and or maintaining a healthy weight, not ability. No, some people struggle more for temperament reasons. How much they like food. Do they have genetically an excessive appetite? That can be a thing in some people. But there's a twist. Diane Newmark-Steiner was the NEDA representative. She is someone who was on the clinical advisory board from the early days, 2002 at least, and was there until...
Yeah, I think temperament is a huge thing when it comes to genetic. So for me, what I talk about a lot on my channel is how emotional I am. That is a huge barrier. It has been the whole time. That's why I've talked about it so much. Because it is harder if you're a super emotional person. It just is. However, you still have to do the damn thing. It's not an excuse. But you have to find other ways of finding motivation. You have to find other ways of getting through. Because you can't always just put a smile on your face and just walk along. That's not everybody's story. And I've always talked about that on this channel. So I agree that is a harder temperament. If you're super, super emotional all the time, that is hard. It is harder, but that's just you as a person. And it's like with anything else, you have to work with what you got, you know?
2022. She wrote a lot about how obesity medicine and the ed world needed to communicate more. I will go into her material in general because I'm on the fence with her. Was she genuinely trying to help to bring these two together in a non-haze way, or was she pretending to not be haze when really she was? I can't tell. But the person who was representing a different organisation, which did eventually merge with NEDA years later in 2018, the BED Association, BEDA, was Cherise Turner was their representative at this same panel. It's possible that all the bad stuff that came out of that panel could be her fault, which means we can't really conclude a whole bunch, unfortunately. It's just something to bear in mind. These are both data points to bear in mind. I will say Diane Newmark-Steiner, most likely the person who would have suggested this to NEDA in the first place. The fact that she was the only one who's named who turned up to the panel, and the fact that she's written so much about interacting with obesity medicine more could have been sabotaged by other people on the panel, including Cherise Turner from BEDA back then. There are also a few people who have been on the board of directors and on the advisory councils who have never been haze at all. And those people might still say some of the same phrases, you'll see, and yet they might not necessarily be in haze just because they are steeped in that world and they're saying things like there are no good and bad foods, and they are saying things like there is no one way you're supposed to look. Those people, like Evelyn Attia,
it's very clear that obesity is a very serious problem.
She has said those things, and yet I don't believe that she is in haze because she's given a presentation to the American Psychiatric Association in which she talked about obesity, and she had people on there with her talking about bariatric surgery and not, as far as I can tell, not demonizing it. And you saw clips I gave of an interview she gave from that conference about obesity. She says later in that interview that, yes, people with BED, the fringe eating disorder, they do seem to struggle with their weight. You know, she's not talking like someone who believes that there's no reason to lose weight. You don't phrase it that way. And that was in 2017 she gave that interview. She was on the board of directors at that time, along with another person who is not haze, Steve Wunderlich, who has written papers in which it does appear that he believes obesity is a problem as well, and that weight loss is worth it. Others in NEDA have written papers where they clearly don't think weight loss matters in recovery from BED at all. Another person, Tamara Pryor, who wrote that horrible article, the fringe eating disorder article, saying you should never try to lose weight even if you have BED and however big you are. She joined the board of directors with those two. Let's revisit the article, the blog post that she wrote about fringe eating disorder. The original version, the oldest I could find on the Wayback Machine, actually has the date that she wrote it of August 3rd, 2018. She did originally date it. You won't find that date on the current version of the page, but the page is mostly the same apart from that. For whatever reason, they took the date out. She is no longer on the board of directors. She left the board of directors also at the same time as Evelyn Attia and Steve Wunderlich left it. So she joined the board of directors at the same time and left it at the same time, along with, to be fair, a lot of other people.
The one of these that kills me is it shows a greater likelihood of remission than other ones. That is such a crock. Such a crock. There are people who, within bingo, people will literally weight normalize and still be in it. It's crazy. It is very resistant. I think because I've told you guys, it's so in the mind as an issue. It's so mental. And it's because when you're bigger in general, you already have a mind-body disconnect kicking in. And so even if you downsize, it's like people still cling to the beliefs so much, even after downsizing. That's what I called the mid-sized princess energy on this channel. Because it's like they want to still be fat even if they're not anymore, or they want to still have the same struggle, or I'm never going to be like a normal person. I'll never be that way. You don't really hear that much from the other ones, you know? From people who have recovered with the other ones, you don't hear that as much. Obviously, there's damage, there's recovery, there's scars. I call them scars. There's a legacy of the TR. That's what I call it. So you can see that in a person because they are, in and of themselves, traumatic. That is actual trauma, not like what a fat activist would claim is trauma. But doing this to, you know, doing that stuff, especially at a severe level, it is traumatic. It is traumatic to the body and it is traumatic to the mind in and of itself. So you are traumatized from having had it. That doesn't mean that you still have it, though. That doesn't mean that you're in the issue still. You're not. And scars do fade. It does get better with time. It's gotten better for me. I still deal with things to this day, though. I've told you guys. So I haven't bingoed since 2020. So it'll be 6 years in October. And I still have panic attacks from reintegrating my body into my psychology. And that's purely psychological due to such a large mind-body disconnect. It's bad. You know, I'd had it very severely, so that's why it's bad. But I'm just saying, it can take years to heal, you know? So you want to nip this in the bud. If you're mild, you've got to get out when you're mild still. And if you're like subclinical, don't ever let it become a real thing, because as somebody who almost died from it, it's still like almost 6 years down the line, I have to do this psychological work. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know? But I never tell you guys, like, I don't feel like I'm normal. I'm never going to be normal. I don't say that. I don't believe that. I think I've actually been more normal than I've ever been since the autumn. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still psychological scars or there aren't still layers that have to be unpeeled or dealt with, because I didn't even realize how disconnected I still was from my body until recently. Probably until January. That's when I started to notice something was off. And it's because I had gotten to a place of stability. In other areas, I had already shed the identity of being fat. I had already done inner work that had nothing to do with my weight. I had, you know, done identity, basically letting that void of the problem fill in already last year. So then I realized, okay, I'm filling in this void because I'm no longer dealing with this weight issue. And that's something that I've dealt with forever. I'm no longer dealing with the label of fatness. I'm no longer dealing with any of that. So who am I now without that? Well, let's let it fill in. So I had to let the void left by that problem fill in. And that led me to realize, hey, you're disconnected from your body still. And so then I've reintegrated, and my body is very traumatized from what I did in the past. And so I feel panic at times. And I know that sounds weird, but again, we often have like such, especially at severe levels, it's like you have such a strong mind-body disconnect. You have such a strong, like, even to like the nervous system, like you program yourself to ignore things for so long. So to reintegrate it, it's like, whoa, you know, it's kind of crazy. But again, that's at a severe level. That's not going to be every single person with the problem. But I'm just saying, like, I still have some scars, or I still have some things that I have to deal with from it. As I said, I did a video about it where I was like, the body remembers. Your body remembers. And I have to like process that on a psychological level still, you know? So it's like, it's getting better, but it's going to take some time. I can tell. But it is better. And I'm not resisting the integration. So that's healing, you know? That's actual recovery. Like, that's just even more recovered, because it's like, okay, now I'm going to have mind-body integration. completely. And so then it's like, I'm going to be totally normal. You see? Then it's like, well, you're just totally fucking normal. But that's the goal. It's getting to a place of normality or normalcy. But within bingo, so many people don't want to be normal. They want to have the problem forever, even if they downsize. But I always tell you guys it's risky, because all this work I'm doing, regrounding myself, reintegrating the body into the psychology at this size, it cements it. It cements recovery. It cements maintenance. It cements all these things. It's no coinky-dink that my appetite has been totally normalized during this integration process. It's not a coincidence. So I'm just saying, again, that will not apply to everybody, but it will apply to somebody if they're severe. Oops. Oopsies. I always do that.
There was a big exodus at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. Suddenly there were only 6 people left on the board. Interestingly, though, Steve Wunderlich and Evelyn Attia, so the 2 non-Hayes people, they'd already been on the councils and they have stayed on the councils, even after the crazy stuff went down involving them that I'm going to show you in a minute. And you can see from the way she's worded this article, I'm not sure if she's soft haze or radical haze. This could go either way. It says recovery does not include weight suppression, appropriate treatment of bed is
I would say radical.
It's about weight loss. Here's the thing, you could be soft haze and still say those things, meaning the version that I've explained already. You could just be meaning that, yeah, maybe the patients will lose weight and maybe they won't, and if they lose weight, it's because that was too much weight for them, whereas radical haze would say your body fluctuates kind of randomly, and it's all a mystery, and if
I see your point.
Goes up and down, it doesn't mean anything at all. You know, that's more radical haze. Oh, your body is changing in this sort of very mystical way they say it, you know?
The only thing that made me think radical about the article was that she said, like, you should never, ever try to downsize. And to me, I was like, that was radical to me.
Even this part, which you could see as more soft haze, is intervention aimed at weight loss in bed patients, shows less weight loss overall, more rapid weight regain, and higher attrition from treatment. I think in this context, it's more like the scaring that they do, like the radical haze people will also say this stuff. Just by the way, I don't agree with that sentence. I do know the studies that she's basing it on, and I would have to make a whole other video on that though. I do not believe that Steve Wunderlich or Evelyn Attia would approve of this, and yet she was on the board with them for all those years, between 2012 and 2022, beginning of 2022. How are these people working together? I think a lot of it is maybe they did bicker behind the scenes. We can't know for sure. People did have mass exoduses every now and then. Mm-hmm. There is evidence in 2013 that there was already some discontent, at least in the lower ranks, that people were having these discussions at some level in NEDA. But there were many paid and unpaid stuff. There would have to be. So those are the ones who are actually going to be putting the stuff on the website. And this is what at least somebody there chose to put on the website. It's an article by Dr. Dia Schwartz, who has criticised NEDA already by this point. This is her comment from 2011 on Reagan Chastain's petition about stopping them working with that Stop Obesity Alliance. Hi Reagan, just wanted you to know I referenced your blog in a response to an article today, probably about that whole scandal, and I hope it brings you more visits. I posted the article and my response on the Association of Size, Diversity and Health server. I hope to meet you someday. I wish you lived in Northern California. We would love for you to guest speak at our book launch. She's talking on behalf of that association. They're the ones who trademarked the phrase health at every size. Posted a blog about this story, presumably then quite critical of NEDA. She wrote this article then within that time frame, because she's put the little trademark thing here, SM, I think that's supposed to be a trademark symbol, and it talks about heated discussion going on in the field, not necessarily in NEDA, but still. There has been a great deal of discussion lately about the health at every size, TM, I think that's supposed to be, philosophy, and how it can interface with the field of ED. Some of the conversations have been quite heated, with concerns that this approach grants permission to eat uncontrollably, thus giving up any investment in obesity control. Others cite current research that challenges the assumption that being fat equates to being unhealthy.
Oh my God.
And then it's the defense of health at every size, essentially, ending with it couldn't hurt. I very much disagree. I also think because they're using the same language, they're saying things like you don't all have to be one size.
I took a nutrition course in college and they taught HAES. And that was in 2016. And so I've seen it being taught.
I think they realise how much they disagree. I think Evelyn Attia probably doesn't look at the website all the time. If you look at, she's a very accomplished, busy lady. Most of the people on these boards are, and the councils, they're busy people, very accomplished. They're also a little older. They're not out my generation and younger. They're probably not chronically online, desperately looking up every web page to see if they agree with it. They're probably not in that world. They just assume that whatever's on there is good. And I think some of it has been that these people only every now and then realise, someone wrote that on the website, or someone programmed this into the chatbot. Someone wrote in the chatbot that people should lose weight. That's terrible. How did that happen? It must be a glitch. I don't think it was a glitch. I think it's that some of you disagree with each other on these things, and it just doesn't come up because you're all talking in such vague terms. But for whatever reason, they stay. Whether it's because they don't notice how bad it really is, or because are so intent on their own area of expertise. So Evelyn Attia has focused much more on the AN and BN side of things. I think she thinks about those the most. And so maybe she's okay with being in this organisation, trying to steer it in the...
There can be this feeling that they're so separated. Or you can feel like if I experience this one, then I can't know anything about the other ones. And especially with bingo, there is this divide where for some reason, well, I don't know, Mia is just kind of thrown into everything, it seems like. I know that sounds weird to say, but there's such a conflation with bingo with Mia. And then there's also like they treat those two as similar to each other at the same time. It's weird. So I think it's just kind of like you can get into this mindset of like, well, that's just so different. That's just so different. And it's like, no. Which again, to the average person, I could understand that idea that it's so different. But to somebody in NEDA, they should have an understanding of all of them. Somebody who's working in this field should understand all of them. Even for me, I do let you guys know I have more of a bingo focus for sure, but I am learning about the other ones, especially now that I'm talking about how they all reinforce each other, because they do. And that's one of the ways too is, well, I just don't know about that, so I guess just go for it. No. No.
The right direction, but not leaving or speaking out about it because, it's a powerful, rich organisation. They get to grant funding to studies, for example. However, if there was any doubt before that this was a contentious issue and starting to tear NEDA apart, there was no doubt by the end of 2023. Let me take you through the events of 2023. The AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, released guidelines that most ED charities, because they're all fat acceptance pilled as hell, and the fat acceptance community hated, and many other people hated too. It was recommending that some children with obesity should be given GLP-1s and weight loss surgery, essentially. This is NEDA's response. Now notice it's not super against weight loss. This could pass for soft health at every size, or it could even pass for not health at every size at all.
So the issue with this is this. People within the TR, so this is something that I don't know if Compulsive Rambler knows, but I'm going to explain this right now. People within the TR, there is this idea that if you intervene with somebody as a child, then you can save them from a lifetime of being overweight. It's been so astroturfed forever. I've heard that forever ago. In fact, that was kind of the logic, even by the time I was downsizing as an adult, in 2022. The idea was you can only intervene with the young people. because once you've reached a point, it's like your set point just kicks in and you're just stuck there forever, like when you're an adult, which is not true because set point theory is bunk. It's bullshit. Anyways, that was one of my earliest activistic points that I completely, viscerally shattered on this channel. And I very aggressively showed that it was BS and it had more to do with the seasons within supermorbid obesity. It had much more to do with that than just some magic number that your body's stuck at. That's BS. The other way that it shows up a lot is within bingo specifically, you can hyperfixate on a certain number. And within that hyperfixation, you don't ever want to go underneath it. So that's the other way. There's a psychological thing and there's a physical thing, especially if somebody's severely hypothyroid, they're going to swell in the winter. And so it can look like you're not downsizing for a few months and then they just never go long enough. And that's it. So
It really depends on how you read it. NEDA stands firm in recognising that as written and without changes before implementation, there is cause for concern about their impact on members of our community. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. We want to acknowledge the expertise, time and resources the AAP committed. They're being very polite because they met with the AAP. This is the EDGE charity that has all the power, remember. They want to keep that power. They don't want to be rude. They have to be professional. Other EDGE charities don't have to. And also, I think other EDGE charities...
Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do this in 3 parts because I think I should because like I said, it's a lot of information and I want to make sure that I can pay attention to it the whole way. So we'll finish it next week. Thank you so much, Compulsive Rambler. I really appreciate this. Remember to go subscribe to Compulsive Rambler. She does great research. Thank you so much. I will talk to you guys again soon. Have a good one. Bye.